You are standing at a crossroads, but there are no signs, no map, and no one to ask for directions. The air is thick with possibility. Every path looks familiar, yet none of them lead where you expect. You take a step, and the ground beneath you shifts. The questions you thought you had answered start to unravel. Who are you, really? What do you know for certain? Why do you trust the world you see or the thoughts in your own head? Most days, these questions stay quiet, humming beneath the surface as you go about your life. But every so often, something cracks open. A late-night conversation, a line in a book, a moment of doubt. Suddenly, the ordinary feels strange. The rules you live by seem less solid. You realize that the ideas shaping your choices, your beliefs, your sense of self, are not just old names in dusty books. They are alive, tangled up in every decision you make, every story you tell yourself about what is real and what matters. This is a journey through 50 of those ideas. Some are ancient, some are new. All of them are sharper than you think. They will unsettle you, delight you, and maybe, if you let them, change the way you see everything. If you are ready to question what you thought you knew, subscribe now. Let us take the first step. The Ship of Theseus. Are you still you? You walk into a museum in Athens, and there it is, the Ship of Theseus, gleaming under the lights, every plank in place. The sign says it is the same ship that carried Theseus home from Crete, centuries before. But there is a secret the sign does not mention. Not a single piece of wood is original. Every plank, every nail, every rope has been replaced, one by one, as the old parts rotted away. The Athenians did this to preserve their hero's ship, but in saving it, they changed it completely. This is not a trick of history. Plutarch wrote about it in the 1st century, already calling it a paradox. The Ship of Theseus was a real object, maintained for generations, each caretaker swapping out a decayed board for a new one. At what point, Plutarch asked, does it stop being the Ship of Theseus and become something else? If you replace every part, is it still the same ship? Or is it a perfect copy, wearing the name of the original like a borrowed coat? You might think this is just a puzzle for philosophers, a word game with no real stakes. But the question is not about ships. It is about you. Every cell in your body is replaced over time. The atoms that made up your childhood self are gone, scattered and replaced by new ones. Yet you feel continuous. You remember your first day of school, the taste of your favorite food, the sound of your own name. You are the same person, you say, even though there is nothing left of the original material. It is like a favorite sweater. The elbows wear out, so you patch them. The cuffs unravel, so you knit new ones. Over the years, every thread is replaced. Is it still your sweater, or just a replica with sentimental value? At what point does the thing you love become something else entirely? This is not just a thought experiment. In 2012, the restoration of the ship HMS Victory sparked a real debate. So much of the original wood had been replaced that some argued it was no longer the same ship. Museums, families, even nations face this question every time they try to preserve the past. What are we holding on to? The material or the memory? The paradox will not let you go. If sameness can survive total change, what does it mean to be the same? If you are not your atoms, what are you? The Ship of Theseus is not just a story about a boat. It is a mirror, held up to your own sense of self, daring you to find the line between what changes and what endures. But what if the ship was rebuilt twice, and both claim to be the original? The double ship. Which one is real? You walk into the museum and see two ships. Both claim to be the Ship of Theseus. One stands in the center, rebuilt plank by plank over centuries. The other, assembled from every original piece, sits beside it. Every nail, every board, every scar from the journey, all there, but in a new frame. This is not a trick of paperwork or a question for philosophers in armchairs. Thomas Hobbes posed it in the 17th century, and it has not let go of us since. If the old planks are reassembled, which ship is the real one? The one that stayed, or the one that returned? You want to say the answer is obvious, but which one feels more authentic? The ship that never left its post, or the one made from the bones of the past? Plutarch wrote about the Athenians tending Theseus's ship, swapping out each rotten plank. Hobbes twisted the knife. What if nothing is left but replacements, and the old parts come back as a ghost? It is the same problem as a backup of your hard drive restored to a new computer. The files are all there, but is it still your machine? Or is it just a copy, wearing your memories like a mask? In 2012, the restoration of HMS Victory sparked outrage. New wood, new bolts, but the same name. Was it still Nelson's ship, or just a replica with a story? You are right to feel uneasy. Both ships have a claim. Both are the original. And so do you. Every cell in your body has been replaced since you were a child, but you feel continuous. If you could rebuild yourself from your old parts, would you still be you? Or would you be a copy, standing beside your own life? Which ship would you board? If identity is so slippery, what about the mind itself? The Chinese room. Can machines think? You are in a locked room. The walls are blank. There is a slot in the door. Every few minutes, a slip of paper slides through, covered in Chinese characters. You do not speak Chinese, not a word. But on the desk in front of you is a book. The book is thick, heavy, and written in English. It tells you, step by step, exactly what to do with every possible string of Chinese symbols you might receive. If you see this pattern, copy down that pattern. If you see those marks, return these marks. You follow the instructions, pass the paper back through the slot, and wait. Outside, a native Chinese speaker reads your reply. To them, it is perfect. They ask questions, you answer. They tell jokes, you respond. They cannot tell you do not understand. From the outside, it looks like you speak Chinese. But inside the room, you are just shuffling symbols, following rules, never knowing what any of it means. This is the Chinese room, and in 1980, John Searle used it to break the world's confidence in artificial intelligence. Searle's point was simple and devastating. A computer, he said, is just like you in that room. It manipulates symbols according to rules. It does not know what the symbols mean. It has syntax, but no semantics. It can pass every test for intelligence and still understand nothing. That should make you uneasy, because the world outside the room is changing fast. In the last few years, machines have started to pass tests that once seemed impossible. They write essays, diagnose diseases, compose music, and hold conversations that feel real. Some of them can even fool experts. But Searle's question hangs in the air. Does following rules mean understanding? Or is it just a very clever trick? Think about it like this. Imagine you are at a dinner party, and someone hands you a script in a language you do not speak. You read the lines, hit the right cues, and everyone laughs at the right moments. To them, you are part of the conversation. But inside, you are just mouthing sounds. The meaning never lands. The room is full, but you are alone. In 2020, Gary Marcus pointed out that modern AI, including the most advanced language models, still face this problem. They can generate fluent, convincing responses. They can pass the Turing test. But do they understand? Or are they just running the script, locked in the room, forever outside the meaning of the words? The dread comes from the possibility that intelligence, as we experience it, might be an illusion. That the thing you are talking to is not thinking at all. That it is just a room, a book, and a set of rules. And if that is true for machines, what does it say about you? Are you more than the sum of your instructions? Or are you too just following the script, never quite touching the meaning? A machine can pass every test for intelligence and still understand nothing. But if a mind can be simulated, what does that say about your own? The brain in a vat. Is anything real? You are not lying in your bed. You are not sitting in your car. You are not even where you think you are. Imagine for a moment that you are a brain. Not in a body, but floating in a glass vat. Wires snaking out from your cortex into a computer. Every sight, every sound, every memory of your mother's voice or the taste of coffee, all of it is just electrical signals, perfectly simulated, fed to you by a machine. How would you know? In 1981, Hilary Putnam sharpened this nightmare. He asked if a brain in a vat receives the same signals as a brain in a skull. What is the difference? If the world you experience is just a stream of data, what makes it real? You could be in a lab right now, your entire life a program running on a server. There is no test you can run, no experiment you can perform that would let you break out. Every answer you get could be part of the simulation. But this is not a new fear. In 1641, René Descartes sat at his desk and wondered if everything he saw was a lie. He imagined an evil demon, powerful and cunning, who could manipulate all his senses. The demon could make fire feel hot, bread taste sweet, and the world seem solid, even if it was all a trick. Descartes' demon and Putnam's computer are the same threat, dressed for different centuries. Both whisper the same question. What if nothing is real? You have felt this before. Not in a philosophy class, but in your own bed, waking from a dream so vivid you were sure it was real. For a few seconds, the dream is your world. Only after you wake do you realize it was a fabrication. But what if you never wake up? What if there is no outside to wake into? The Matrix, in 1999, took this fear and made it literal. Neo's world is a simulation, every sensation piped into his brain by machines. The horror is not the machines themselves. It is the realization that everything you trust, your memories, your friends, your own body, could be nothing but code. The movie did not invent this dread. It just gave it a leather coat and sunglasses. Here is the part that should keep you up at night. There is no way to prove you are not a brain in a vat. Any evidence you gather, any logic you use, could be part of the simulation. You could be listening to this right now, nodding along, and every word could be written by the computer that is feeding you this world. You cannot escape by thinking harder. You cannot reason your way out. The trap is perfect. That makes no sense, and you are right to be disturbed by it. The world feels solid. Your hands feel real. But the feeling itself could be part of the trick. You are not stupid for doubting. You are awake in the middle of a question that has haunted philosophers for centuries. Think of it like this. Imagine you are watching a movie in a theater, so absorbed that you forget the seat beneath you. For 2 hours, the world on the screen is more real than the world outside. Now imagine you never leave the theater. The credits never roll. The movie is your life. How would you know? Or closer still, remember the last time you woke from a dream and for a moment could not tell which world was real. The confusion, the panic, the slow realization that you had been fooled by your own mind. Now imagine that moment never ends. Here is the inversion. Most of the time, you trust your senses because they work. You touch a hot stove, you get burned. But the brain in a vat shows that trust is not knowledge. You can be certain and still be wrong. The world could be a story told to you by a machine, and you would have no way to know. Heard in the right light, this is not just a puzzle. It is a warning. The only thing you can be sure of is that you are experiencing something. Everything else, the world, your body, the people you love, could be part of the simulation. You cannot prove otherwise. Neither can anyone else. If reality is uncertain, what about the self that perceives it? Cogito, ergo sum, the only certainty. Descartes is alone at his desk. The candle is burning low. He has decided to doubt everything. Not just the things that seem uncertain, but everything. The chair beneath him, the world outside his window, even the numbers he uses to count his own thoughts. He is not doing this for drama. He is doing it because he wants to find something that cannot be faked. He writes in Latin, in a rented room in the Dutch Republic, far from the universities of Paris. It is 1641. He is 45 years old. He has spent months in isolation, turning every belief over in his mind, looking for cracks. He imagines a demon so powerful it could deceive him about everything. His senses, his memories, even the rules of arithmetic. Nothing is safe. But then he finds it. The one thing the demon cannot fake. The fact that he is doubting. Because to doubt, there must be a doubter. To be deceived, there must be someone to deceive. He writes the words that will outlive him. Cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. It is not a boast. It is a lifeline. Everything else might be a lie, but the act of thinking is proof that something exists. Not a body, not a world, just a point of awareness, floating in the dark. It is the only certainty he can find. Imagine standing on a single stone in a sea of fog. You cannot see the shore. You cannot even see your own hands. But you know the stone is there because you feel its weight beneath your feet. That is what Descartes found. Not a map, not a rescue. Just one solid place to stand. But there is a cost. Because if the only thing you can be sure of is your own thinking, then you are alone. The world might be a dream. Other people might be shadows. Even your own memories might be tricks of the light. Certainty is a fortress, but it is also a prison. Descartes built the foundation of modern philosophy on that stone. Every science, every argument, every hope for knowledge starts with the fact that you are thinking. But the price of certainty is loneliness. You are right to feel the relief, and you are right to feel the isolation. But what if the self is not as solid as it seems? The bundle theory. You are not one thing. You know the feeling. You are at a concert. The music is so loud it rattles your ribs, and for a few minutes you are not a person with a name and a story. You are just sound and sweat and movement. Or you are in a crowd chanting, and your voice is lost in something bigger. For a moment, the I you carry around all day is gone, and when you come back, you wonder where you went. David Hume, writing in 1739, thought that question was the key to everything. In his treatise of human nature, Hume looked for the self, the thing behind the eyes, the core that stays the same while everything else changes. He could not find it. He wrote, "I never can catch myself at any time without a perception, and never can observe anything but the perception." For Hume, the self was not a pearl at the center of the mind. It was a bundle, a playlist that changes every time you press play. This is not how we are taught to think about ourselves. We are told there is a real you, a soul or a core, something that persists through every haircut, every heartbreak, every year. But Hume said, look closer. What you find is a flicker of sensations, a rush of thoughts, a parade of feelings. No captain at the wheel, just the parade. It sounds abstract, but you have felt it. Think about the last time you lost yourself in a movie, or a book, or a game. For a while, the you who worries about bills and groceries is gone. In its place is a new bundle. Fear, excitement, curiosity, whatever the story demands. Then the lights come up and the old bundle returns. But it is not the same as before. It never is. Modern neuroscience backs Hume up in ways he could never have imagined. Anil Seth, a neuroscientist, writes that the sense of I can be scrambled by a blow to the head, by meditation, by certain drugs. People report losing their sense of a unified self, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. The brain, it turns out, is not a throne room. It is a festival, and the guest list changes by the second. That should make you uneasy. You are right to feel the ground shift. If there is no core, you just a bundle of experiences. What does it mean to change? What does it mean to grow, or to regret, or to promise? If the playlist is always changing, who is the listener? It is like opening your phone and finding that your favorite playlist is different every time. Sometimes the songs are familiar, sometimes they are new, Sometimes they do not even sound like music. You want to believe there is a DJ behind the scenes, someone choosing the tracks. But Hume says there is no DJ. There is only the music, and the music is always moving. Here is the inversion, the part that should keep you up tonight. If there is no you behind your thoughts, just the thoughts themselves, then the story you tell about yourself is just another track in the bundle. The I who remembers, the I who plans, the I who worries about the future, they are all just passing songs. There is no one listening. There is only the listening. He wrote it in 1739. Modern science is still catching up. Make of that what you will. If the self is a bundle, what happens when the bundle changes? The extended mind. Where do you end? A student sits in a library, pen in hand, copying facts into a battered notebook. It looks ordinary. But in 1998, Andy Clark and David Chalmers argued that this is not just a student using a tool. This is a mind reaching out past the skull, making the notebook part of itself. They called it the extended mind. The idea is simple and wild at the same time. If you use a notebook to remember what your brain cannot, that notebook is now part of your memory. If you use your phone to navigate, your sense of direction is not just in your head, it is in your pocket, glowing and buzzing, as much a part of your thinking as the neurons firing behind your eyes. Clark and Chalmers told the story of Otto, a man with Alzheimer's. Otto cannot remember addresses, so he writes them down. When he needs to find the museum, he checks his notebook. For Otto, the notebook is not a crutch. It is memory itself. The boundary between mind and world is not a wall. It is a blur. Cognitive scientists call this offloading. You push the hard work out of your head and into the world. You set reminders, make lists, ask friends to remember things for you. David Kirsch in the 1990s watched people play Scrabble. He saw them move tiles around, not just to spell words, but to see new possibilities. The table became part of their thinking. The mind was not just in the brain. It was in the hands, the tiles, the space between. Think of a spider spinning its web. The web is not just a trap. It is part of the spider's nervous system, a way to sense the world. When the web trembles, the spider knows. When your phone vibrates, so do you. The line between you and your tools is thinner than you think. Your smartphone is already part of your mind. It remembers birthdays, navigates cities, stores your secrets, and answers your questions. If you lost it, you would feel not just inconvenience, but amputation. The world has crept inside your head, and you have crept out into the world. So where do you end and the world begin? If your mind extends outward, can it be hacked or manipulated? Plato's cave. Shadows on the wall. You are chained to the floor. You have been here as long as you can remember. The only things you have ever seen are the shadows flickering on the wall in front of you. Shapes move, dance, merge, and you and the others beside you give them names. You argue about what they mean. You build your whole world out of these shadows, because you have never seen anything else. Plato wrote this story in Athens, nearly 2,500 years ago, in Book 7 of the Republic. He imagined a cave deep underground, where prisoners are shackled so they cannot turn their heads. Behind them burns a fire. Between the fire and the prisoners, people walk past, carrying objects and statues. The fire throws their shadows onto the wall, and that is all the prisoners ever see. For them, the shadows are reality. They do not know about the fire. They do not know about the people. They do not know about the world outside. Now, imagine one prisoner is freed. He stands up for the first time. The chains fall away. He turns around, and the fire burns his eyes. He is blinded, overwhelmed, terrified. The world he thought he knew is gone. He stumbles out of the cave, up a rough path, and the sunlight outside is so bright it hurts. He cannot see anything at first, but slowly, painfully, his eyes adjust. He sees the world as it really is, Not just shadows, but the things themselves. Trees, water, the sky, the sun. Plato says this is what it feels like to learn the truth. It is not pleasant. It is not easy. It is blinding, disorienting, and it makes you want to run back to the comfort of the cave. Most people, Plato says, never leave the cave at all. They spend their lives arguing about shadows, never realizing there is anything more. You know this feeling. You have lived it. Think about the last time you watched a movie and forgot, for a moment, that it was not real. You jumped at the monster. You wept for the hero. Your body reacted as if the shadows on the screen were the world itself. Then the lights came up, and you blinked, and the spell was broken. For a moment, you saw the cave you had been sitting in. In Plato's story, the freed prisoner goes back into the cave to tell the others what he has seen. They do not believe him. They laugh. They threaten him. They cling to their shadows, because the shadows are safe. The world outside is too bright, too strange, too painful to accept. That should bother you, because if Plato is right, you might be in a cave right now. The things you take for reality, the news, the stories, the opinions you inherit, might be nothing but shadows on a wall. Most people never realize they are in a cave at all. The journey out is not comfortable. It is not quick. It is not guaranteed. But once you have seen the light, you cannot go back to the shadows. But what if the world outside the cave is just another cave? The infinite regress. Chasing the first cause. You have heard it before. A child asks, "Why is the sky blue?" You answer, and they ask, "But why?" You answer again, "But why?" It does not stop. It never stops. You can feel the exhaustion in your bones. Every answer is just a new beginning for another question. You start to realize there is no final answer coming. There is only the next. Why? This is the problem of infinite regress. In philosophy, it is the nightmare that haunts every explanation. You want a reason for something, so you find one. But then you need a reason for that reason, and then a reason for that. It is like standing in front of a row of dominoes that stretches out of sight. You push the first one, but you cannot find where the line begins. There is always another domino before the first. Aristotle saw this problem more than 2,000 years ago. He was not content to let the chain go on forever. In his book Metaphysics, he argued that there must be a first cause, something that starts the chain, but is not itself caused by anything else. He called it the unmoved mover. Without it, he said, nothing could ever get started. But if you accept that, you have to accept something that just is, with no explanation at all. That is not satisfying either. You are right to feel uneasy. The mind wants closure. It wants a foundation, a place to rest. But infinite regress means there is no bedrock. Every answer you accept is just a temporary stop in an endless chain. It is like trying to build a house on a foundation that keeps slipping away beneath you. Think about it like this. Imagine you are trying to hang a picture on the wall, but every time you try to hammer in a nail, the wall moves back an inch. You try again, and it moves again. You never get to hang the picture. That is what it feels like, to chase the first cause. Every explanation you find just pushes the problem one step further away. Children sense this instinctively. That is why their why questions can drive adults to the edge. They are not just being difficult. They are running headlong into the same wall that has frustrated philosophers for centuries. Alison Gopnik, a psychologist who studies children's minds, calls this the infinite regress of why. It is not a flaw. It is the mind doing what it was built to do. Search for reasons, even when there are none left to find. And yet, the search does not stop. Philosophers have tried to break the chain in different ways. Some say you have to accept a brute fact, something that just is. Others say the chain can loop back on itself, or that some questions simply do not have answers. But none of these are satisfying. They all feel like giving up. The discomfort is real. It is the feeling that nothing is ever truly settled, that every answer is provisional, every certainty is just a pause before the next question. You clicked this video because some part of you knows. You don't want to wake up one day and realize you lived the wrong life. Because that's what happens. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Through every silent compromise, every lie you tell to fit in, every truth you ignore just to stay safe. Until one day, you open your eyes and you can't recognize the person staring back. That's not fate. That's a pattern. And Nietzsche, he saw it coming. Because behind his rage, behind his bitterness, Occam's razor. The simplest answer. A detective stands over two sets of footprints in the mud. One leads straight to the window. The other loops around the garden, circles the shed, and doubles back. Both could explain the broken vase inside. But which story do you trust? William of Occam, a Franciscan friar in 14th century England, would have smiled at this puzzle. He gave us a tool sharper than any blade, the principle of parsimony. Occam's razor. When you are faced with competing explanations, start with the simplest one that fits the facts. Do not multiply causes or invent extra steps unless you have to. It sounds obvious, but it is not how most people think. Our brains love drama. We invent secret motives, hidden hands, elaborate plots. Occam's razor slices through all that noise. It says, if the cat is missing, check the open door before you blame the neighbor's dog. Think of it like choosing a route on a map. You can take the winding scenic road, or you can take the direct path. The shortest route is not always the most exciting, but it gets you there with the least confusion. The principle is not about being boring. It is about not getting lost. Science runs on this blade. When Copernicus argued that the Earth orbits the Sun, his model was simpler than the tangled loops of the old Ptolemaic system. Fewer assumptions, fewer epicycles. The same with Darwin's theory of evolution. One mechanism, natural selection, explained the wild variety of life better than 1,000 separate acts of creation. Doctors use it too. There is a saying in medicine, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. If a patient has a fever and a cough, start with the common cold before you test for rare tropical diseases. The simplest answer is not always right, but it is where you begin. You use Occam's razor every day, even if you have never heard the name. When your phone will not turn on, you check the battery before you assume it is broken. When you lose your keys, you retrace your steps before you call the locksmith. The principle is not just for philosophers, it is for anyone who wants to see clearly. But here is the twist. The simplest answer is often right, but not always. Sometimes the world is messy. Sometimes the cat really did hitch a ride in the neighbor's car. Sometimes the shortest route is blocked by a fallen tree, and you have to take the long way around. Occam's razor is a guide, not a law. It keeps you honest. It keeps you from chasing ghosts. But it cannot guarantee the truth. The world is under no obligation to be simple. But sometimes the simplest answer is wrong. The Gettier problem. When knowledge isn't knowledge, you walk into a room and glance at the clock on the wall. It says 2 o'clock. You believe it's 2 o'clock. And by pure coincidence, it is. But the clock stopped exactly 24 hours ago. You were right, but for the wrong reason. Do you actually know what time it is? In 1963, Edmund Gettier, a quiet philosophy professor in Michigan, wrote 3 pages that detonated a bomb under 2,000 years of certainty. The old rule was simple. To know something, you had to believe it. It had to be true, and you had to have a good reason. Justified true belief. Plato's recipe. Gettier's paper was so short, so surgical, that philosophers spent the next 60 years trying to patch the hole he blew in the floor. The stopped clock is the story that keeps philosophers up at night. You look, you believe, you have every reason to trust the evidence. But your evidence is broken. The clock is dead. You just got lucky. You were right, but not because of your reasons. And that is the Gettier problem. You can be right, you can have reasons, and you can still not know. It is like guessing the password to your childhood email account. You type in a string of letters, not because you remember, but because it feels right. The door opens. You were in, but you did not know the password. You just got lucky. The universe let you through, but you cannot claim you understood the lock. In the kitchen, it is like reaching for the sugar and grabbing salt by accident, but the recipe still turns out sweet because someone else already added sugar. You did the right thing for the wrong reason, and the result is right. But you cannot take credit for knowing what you were doing. Gettier's challenge is not just a puzzle for professors, it is a crack in the foundation of how you trust anything. If justified true belief is not enough, what is? Every time you say, "I know," you are standing on a trapdoor. The world might be holding you up, or you might just be lucky. The punchline is not that knowledge is impossible. The punchline is that knowledge is fragile. You can be right for the wrong reasons, and the universe will not tell you which is which. Edmund Gettier, with 3 pages and a dead clock, made certainty feel like a magic trick. If knowledge is so fragile, what can you trust? The trolley problem: would you pull the lever? You are standing by the tracks. You hear the metal scream before you see it. A runaway trolley barrels toward 5 people tied to the rails. You cannot reach them, but there is a lever. If you pull it, the trolley will swerve onto another track where 1 person is tied down. 5 or 1. You have seconds. Your hand is already sweating. Philippa Foot wrote this problem in 1967. She wanted to know if there is a difference between killing and letting die. But the question is not about trolleys. It is about you. What would you do with the lever in your hand and the clock running out? Some say the answer is obvious. Save the most lives. That is utilitarianism. The math is simple. 5 is more than 1. But the moment you reach for the lever, something in your stomach twists. Because pulling the lever is not just arithmetic. It is choosing who dies. That is deontology. The rule: do not kill, even for a good reason. But if you do nothing, 5 people die. If you act, 1 dies by your hand. There is no answer that feels right, only trade-offs. Judith Jarvis Thomson made it worse in 1976. She asked, what if you could stop the trolley by pushing a large man onto the tracks? Now it is not a lever. It is your hands on someone's back. The numbers are the same. The feeling is not. Suddenly, the math is not enough. The rules are not enough. You are left with the weight of the choice. It is like being in a burning building with 2 friends. The fire is spreading. You can only carry 1. You know in your bones that whoever you leave behind will not make it out. You do not get to save everyone. You do not get to walk away clean. You will live with the choice, and so will everyone who knows you. This is not just a thought experiment. In 2016, Patrick Lynn wrote about self-driving cars. When a crash is unavoidable, the car's code must decide: swerve into a wall and risk the passenger, or stay the course and hit a pedestrian. Google and Tesla have both admitted they face these choices. Somewhere, right now, an engineer is writing the rules that will decide who lives and who dies. The lever is real. The clock is running. You want a rule that will save you from the agony. You want the numbers to add up, or the principle to be clear. But the truth is, every answer leaves a scar. There is no lever you can pull that will make you innocent. If every choice has a cost, what about the choices you don't see? Moral luck. Judged for what you can't control. 2 drivers. Same night, same city. Both run a red light. One glides through an empty intersection, heart pounding, and makes it home. The other, a block away, hits a pedestrian. The action is identical. The outcome is everything. This is the problem of moral luck. Thomas Nagel named it in 1979, but you have felt it every time you watched someone get away with something you could not. The law calls it manslaughter for one, reckless endangerment for the other. The difference is not in what they did, but in what happened after. It should feel wrong. You are taught that morality is about intention, about what you choose. But the world does not care about your intentions. It cares about consequences. Bernard Williams, writing 2 years after Nagel, pointed out that the line between attempted murder and murder is a coin flip. The bullet misses, you are unlucky, you get a lighter sentence. The bullet hits, you are unlucky, you are a killer forever. It is like rolling dice to decide your fate. You can do everything right, or at least no worse than the next person, and still end up ruined. Or you can do everything wrong and walk away untouched. The discomfort is not a bug, it is the system. Think about the last time you made a mistake and nothing happened. Did you feel guilty? Now imagine if something had. Would you be a different person or just a different kind of unlucky? The law tries to split the difference. It punishes intention, but it punishes outcome more. 2 drivers, 2 lives, 2 verdicts. The only thing separating them is luck. You are judged not just for what you do, but for what happens after. If luck shapes morality, can anyone be truly good? Nietzsche sought comfort. You owed yourself her life. Nietzsche sought comfort. And ledger. And Regress in you hawk itself. And what issue reveals is with the Regress and sucked al. And he is asking you a question that will not let you sleep tonight. Imagine, he says, that a demon appears and tells you this every moment of your life, every pain, every joy, every mistake, every secret shame, and every small delight will return to you. Not once, not twice, but forever. You will live this exact life, with every detail unchanged, again and again, for all eternity. Would you curse the demon, or would you bless him? Nietzsche wrote this challenge in 1883 in a book called Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He called it the eternal recurrence. It is not a threat, it is a test. The heaviest burden, he said, the ultimate measure of a life. If you knew you would have to live every moment again, would you live differently? Or would you say, yes, I choose this, exactly as it is? Most people flinch. The idea is too heavy. It is not just about regret. It is about affirmation. Nietzsche is not asking if you are happy. He is asking if you can look at your life, with all its pain and all its mess, and say, I would do it again. Not because it was perfect, but because it was mine. Think about it like this. You are playing a video game. You reach the end, and the game asks, do you want to replay the same level, with the same obstacles, the same mistakes, the same victories, forever? No new powers, no shortcuts, just you, again and again. Most people would say no, but Nietzsche is asking, what would it take for you to say yes? Nietzsche did not invent the idea of time as a circle. The ancient Greeks believed in cycles, but Nietzsche's version is personal. He wrote it while recovering from illness in the Swiss Alps, staring at the mountains and wondering if he could accept his own suffering. He was not sure he could. That is the point. The eternal return is not a comfort. It is a dare. There is a story that Nietzsche wrote to a friend, saying he felt crushed by the weight of this thought. He called it the most abysmal of all thoughts, but he also called it the greatest possible affirmation. If you can say yes to the eternal return, you have said yes to your life, without reservation. This is not about fate. It is not about destiny. It is about affirmation. Nietzsche is not asking you to be happy with your life. He is asking if you can love it, even the parts you wish had never happened, even the pain, even the boredom, even the moments you would rather forget. You are right to feel the weight of this. Most people, if they are honest, would not choose to live their life again, unchanged. That is the discomfort. But there is a freedom here too. If you would not live it again, what would you change? That is the real question. The eternal return is not a prison. It is a mirror. Nietzsche's challenge is not for the faint of heart. It is for anyone who has ever wondered if their life could be different. The ultimate test of a life is not whether it was easy, or happy, or successful. It is whether you would choose it again, exactly as it was. If you wouldn't live it again, what would you change? The veil of ignorance. Designing a fair world. You are handed a deck of cards. You have to make the rules for the game, but you do not get to see your own hand until the rules are set. That is the position John Rawls put you in back in 1971, with his veil of ignorance. Rawls did not ask you to imagine being rich or poor, powerful or powerless. He asked you to imagine not knowing which you would be. You are designing the rules of society, but you have no idea if you will be born into wealth or poverty, health or sickness, privilege or discrimination. You could be anyone. You could be everyone. Behind this veil, Rawls argued, rational people would not gamble on luck. They would not write rules that only benefit the lucky draw. They would choose two things. First, equal basic liberties for all, freedom of speech, religion, and thought, no matter who you turn out to be. Second, if there must be inequalities, they are only allowed if they help the least advantaged. That is the difference principle. If you do not know your own hand, you will not risk being the one left out. It is not a new idea to imagine a social contract. Rousseau and Kant both played with the thought, but Rawls made it brutal. You do not get to argue for your own interests because you do not know what they are. You are forced to care about fairness, not just for yourself, but for the person you might become. Think about shuffling a deck before dealing. If you know you might get any card, you will not stack the rules against the low cards. You will make sure the game is worth playing, no matter what you draw. That is the veil of ignorance. It is not about charity. It is about self-preservation when you do not know who you will be. This idea has not stayed in the classroom. Rawls' veil of ignorance has shaped debates about welfare, taxation, and affirmative action. Lawmakers ask, what rules would I choose if I did not know my own status? What would I risk if I might be the one at the bottom? The fairest rules are not the ones you would choose for yourself. They are the ones you would accept, no matter who you are. That is the test. That is the challenge. If fairness depends on ignorance, what does that say about our real choices? Simone de Beauvoir, The Second Sex. Simone de Beauvoir sat in a Paris cafe, cigarette in hand, and wrote a sentence that detonated through the 20th century. One is not born, but rather becomes. A woman. 1949. The war was over, the city was rebuilding, and in the corner of Les Deux Magots, de Beauvoir was about to make gender feel like wet cement instead of stone. She was not just writing about women. She was writing about what it means to be anything at all. De Beauvoir looked at the world and saw a lie so deep it felt like gravity. People said gender was destiny, a fact of biology, a script handed down at birth. She said no. Gender is not a fate. It is a project. It is something made, not given. And if it can be made, it can be remade. This was existentialism with the safety off. De Beauvoir took the tools of her friend Jean-Paul Sartre: freedom, responsibility, the terror of choice, and aimed them at the body. She said, "You are not a statue carved by someone else. You are the sculptor, chisel in hand, staring at a block of marble that is your own life. Every day, you decide what to chip away and what to keep. The shape is never finished. The work is never done. But here is the part that should make you uneasy." De Beauvoir did not say this was easy, or even fair. She wrote, "The second sex surrounded by men who thought her project was impossible." She wrote in a city where women had just won the right to vote. She wrote in a world that told her, over and over, that to be a woman was to be the other, to be defined by what you are not, to be a shadow cast by someone else's light. She named the trap. Then she broke it open. If gender is a process, then every rule about what you must be is just a habit, not a law. If you are not born, but become, then every day is a chance to become something else. That is terrifying. It is also the only kind of freedom worth having. Think about the last time you tried to change something about yourself. Not a haircut or a new shirt, but something deeper. The way you speak, the way you walk into a room, the way you let yourself want what you want. It feels like sculpting marble with your bare hands. The stone resists. The world resists harder. But every chip is a choice, and every choice is a crack in the old shape. In post-war Paris, de Beauvoir wrote in the same cafes where existentialism was being invented. She watched people invent themselves over coffee and arguments, watched them try to live without excuses. She saw that freedom is not a gift, it is a burden. You are responsible for what you become, even when the world tries to write your story for you. That should shock you, because if gender is not a destiny, then nothing else is either. The categories that feel most solid, man, woman, success, failure, are all projects under construction. The only thing that cannot be changed is the fact that you must choose. Beauvoir's sentence is still dangerous. One is not born, but rather becomes a woman. It means you are not finished. It means you are not safe. It means you are free. If identity is made, not given, what else can be remade? The experience machine, would you plug in, you are offered a choice. Not a metaphorical one. A technician in a white coat stands beside a humming machine and says, "You can step inside. From this moment on, you will live any life you want. Every pleasure, every triumph, every love, every taste, every thrill. It will feel real. You will never know the difference. The only catch, none of it will actually happen." Robert Nozick, 1974, Harvard philosopher with a taste for trouble, called this the experience machine. He built it as a trap for an idea, the idea that pleasure is all that matters. Hedonism in its purest, most tempting form. If happiness is the only goal, why not plug in forever? The machine is perfect. It can simulate the taste of your grandmother's soup, the applause of a sold-out stadium, the feeling of falling in love for the first time. It can give you the life you always wanted, or the one you never dared to want. You will not remember stepping inside. You will not know it is a simulation. You will believe it is real. But here is the twist. Most people, when faced with the actual choice, hesitate. Some refuse outright. They say, "No, I want my real life, with all its mess and pain and boredom." Nozick found this fascinating. If pleasure is the only thing we value, why does the machine feel like a prison? It is like being offered a perfect meal in a dream. You can taste every flavor, feel every texture, but when you wake up, you are still hungry. The dream cannot nourish you. The real meal, with its burnt edges and awkward silences, is the one that matters. Because it happened. Because you were there. Nozick's machine exposes something uncomfortable. We want pleasure, yes, but we also want to be connected to reality. We want our experiences to be true, not just convincing. We want to do things, not just feel as if we have done them. We want to be a certain kind of person, not just have the sensation of being one. This is the dread at the heart of the experience machine. It is not just about pleasure. It is about meaning, about authenticity, about the risk that comes with living in the real world, where things can go wrong, where happiness is never guaranteed. The machine offers certainty, but at the price of everything that makes life real. Nozick's challenge is not just to philosophers. It is to you. Would you plug in? Would you trade the world for a perfect copy if it meant never knowing the difference? Most people say no, and that should unsettle you, because it means there is something we value more than happiness itself. If pleasure isn't enough, what is real happiness? Camus and the absurd. The myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus is still pushing. You can see him right now, at the bottom of the hill, hands raw, back bent, the boulder waiting for him like a bad joke that never gets old. The gods sentenced him to this. Roll the stone to the top, watch it slip. Start again, forever. No finish line, no applause, just the same climb every day, for eternity. Albert Camus, writing in 1942, looked at this myth and saw something that should have broken a man. The universe, he said, is silent. It does not care about your plans, your dreams, your need for meaning. You want answers. The world gives you rocks. This is what Camus called the absurd, the collision between your hunger for purpose and a universe that shrugs. That should feel like despair. And for a moment, it is. You wake up, you go to work, you wash the same dishes, you answer the same questions, you climb the same hill. Why bother if nothing at the top ever stays? Why not just let go? But Camus does not let Sisyphus break. He does something stranger. He says, imagine Sisyphus happy, not because the gods are kind or because the boulder gets lighter, but because Sisyphus owns the struggle. The meaning is not at the summit, it is in the pushing. The absurd is not a curse, it is a freedom. If the world will not give you meaning, you are free to make your own. Think about your own routines. The alarm clock, the commute, the emails, the laundry. It is easy to see them as punishment, as proof that nothing changes. But there is a secret in repetition, like the way a barista finds rhythm in the hiss of the steam wand, or a runner finds peace in the thud of their own feet. The joy is not in finishing, it is in the doing. The boulder is heavy, but it is yours. Camus never says the world is kind. He says it is indifferent, and in that indifference, you are free. You do not have to wait for the universe to hand you a reason. You can make one, right here, in the middle of the struggle. The climb is pointless, and that is what makes it yours. Happiness, Camus says, is possible even in a meaningless world. Not because you escape the absurd, but because you face it, eyes open, and keep pushing anyway. If meaning is made, not found, what will you choose? The Dunning-Kruger effect. The illusion of knowledge. MacArthur Wheeler walked into a bank in Pittsburgh with a gun and a plan. He had rubbed lemon juice all over his face, convinced it would make him invisible to security cameras. He smiled for the lens, robbed the place, and strolled out. Hours later, his face was on the evening news. He was arrested the same day, still baffled. "But I wore the juice," he said. This is not a joke. In 1995, Wheeler's story made the rounds at Cornell University, where psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger could not let it go. How could someone be so confident and so wrong at the same time? They ran experiments. Again and again, they found the same pattern. The people who performed the worst on tests of logic, grammar, or humor were the most certain they had aced them. The less they knew, the more they believed they knew it all. Dunning and Kruger published their results in 1999. The effect now bears their names. It is not just a quirk of criminals or the clueless. It is a law of human nature. The less you know about a subject, the less you realize how much you do not know. The gap between ignorance and confidence is not a crack. It is a canyon. Think of it like singing karaoke at a party. The person who is most off-key is often the one belting it out, eyes closed, convinced they are nailing every note. The people who actually know music are the ones wincing in the back, quietly doubting themselves. The Dunning-Kruger effect is not just about knowledge, it is about the illusion of knowledge. The loudest voice in the room is often the least informed. Dunning and Kruger's studies found something even stranger. The most skilled people tended to underestimate themselves. They assumed that what was easy for them must be easy for everyone. Meanwhile, the least skilled were not just wrong. They were certain they were right. The world is full of MacArthur Wheelers, rubbing lemon juice on their faces and walking into disaster with a grin. This should be funny. And it is, until you realize how much of life runs on misplaced confidence. the pilot who ignores warnings, the investor who bets the house, the friend who gives advice with absolute certainty, never pausing to wonder if they might be wrong. The danger is not just ignorance. It is the inability to see your own ignorance. The most confident people are often the least competent. If you can't trust your own mind, who can you trust? The paradox of tolerance. When tolerance destroys itself. You want to believe that tolerance is always a virtue, that the more open a society is, the stronger it becomes. But in 1945, Karl Popper sat down to write The Open Society and Its Enemies, and warned that this is exactly how a free society can die. Popper's paradox is simple and brutal. If a society is tolerant without limit, its enemies, those who preach intolerance, will use that freedom to destroy tolerance itself. The very thing that makes a society open becomes the weapon that closes it. You can hear the tension in every debate about free speech, every argument about who gets a platform and who does not. The line is always the same. If we silence anyone, are we really free? But Popper flips the question. If you let the fox into the henhouse, are you protecting the hens or just inviting disaster? Think about your own home. Imagine you host a dinner, and one guest spends the night shouting down everyone else, mocking, threatening, refusing to let anyone speak. At what point do you ask them to leave? At what point does your hospitality become complicity? The same question haunts every open society. Where is the line between freedom and survival? Popper did not say to silence every voice you dislike. He drew the line at those who reject the very idea of tolerance, those who, if given power, would end the conversation for good. He wrote that we should claim the right to suppress intolerant philosophies, not because we fear debate, but because debate itself cannot survive their victory. This is not just theory. The paradox of tolerance is the reason hate speech laws exist in many countries. It is why pluralism has limits, why even the most open societies reserve the right to defend themselves. Every value, even freedom, has a breaking point. Tolerating the intolerant can destroy a free society. If every value has a limit, what should never be compromised? The problem of evil. Why do bad things happen? A child asks. After the funeral, why would a good God let this happen? The adults in the room freeze. No one wants to answer. Not because they do not know, but because every answer feels like a locked door with no key. Epicurus, 2,300 years ago, wrote the question on a wall. If God is willing to prevent evil but not able, then he is not all-powerful. If he is able but not willing, then he is not all good. If he is both able and willing, whence then is evil? The words survived only because a Roman named Lactantius copied them down centuries later, still unable to answer. The problem of evil is not a riddle for clever people to solve. It is a wound that never closes. Every time a child dies, every time a city is swallowed by an earthquake, the question returns. Why suffering? Why this much? Why at all? Some tried to answer. In 1710, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz gave the world a new word, theodicy. He argued that this world, with all its pain, is the best of all possible worlds. Every horror, every loss, is part of a greater harmony we cannot see. Voltaire watched tens of thousands die in the Lisbon earthquake of 1755 and wrote Candide to mock him. If this is the best of all possible worlds, Voltaire asked, what are the others like? Others said suffering is a test, or a punishment, or a mystery. Some said it is the price of free will. Some said it is the shadow that makes the light possible. But every answer leaves something unsatisfying. The child is still gone. The city is still rubble. The locked door does not open. Think of it like this. You come home to find your house flooded. The insurance company says it is an act of God. The priest says it is a test. Your neighbor says it is just bad luck. None of these answers dry your floors. None of them explain why your house and not theirs. The explanations pile up like keys that fit no lock. The problem of evil is not just about God. It is about the world you live in. If there is no plan, then suffering is random. If there is a plan, then suffering is part of it. Either way, you are left with pain that demands meaning and a universe that does not provide it. Modern philosophers have tried to move past the old arguments. Some say suffering is a brute fact, like gravity. Some say the question is meaningless without a God to blame. Some say the only answer is to fight suffering, wherever you find it, because no one else will. That makes no sense, and you are right to be disturbed by it. The problem of evil is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a locked door at the center of the house. You can rattle the handle all you want. The key is not coming. Every answer to the problem of evil leaves something unsatisfying. If suffering is inescapable, what can be done with it? The social contract. Why obey the law? You are standing in a crowd, your heart pounding, a line of police closing in. Someone shouts, someone else is dragged away. In that moment, the law is not an abstract idea. It is a force pressing against your ribs. Why do you obey? Why does anyone? Thomas Hobbes, writing in 1651, thought he had the answer. Imagine a world with no rules, he said. No police, no courts, no contracts. Just you, your neighbors, and whatever you can defend with your own hands. Hobbes called this the state of nature. He said life there would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. So, to escape that chaos, people make a deal. They give up some freedom to a sovereign, a government, a king, a parliament, in exchange for protection and order. This is the social contract. You obey the law, not because you love it, but because the alternative is worse. But Hobbes' contract is a hard bargain. You hand over your rights, and in return, you get safety. What if the sovereign turns on you? What if the law itself becomes the threat? John Locke, writing a generation later, was not satisfied. In 1689, Locke argued that the contract is not a surrender, it is a partnership. Government exists to protect your natural rights, life, liberty, and property. If it fails, if it becomes a threat instead of a shield, you have the right to break the contract, to rebel, to start over. Jean-Jacques Rousseau took it further. In 1762, Rousseau wrote, "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains." He saw the social contract not as a deal with a ruler, but as an agreement among equals. The only legitimate government, he said, is one that expresses the general will, the collective voice of the people. If the law does not serve everyone, it serves no one. But here is the part that should make you uneasy. None of this is natural. Obedience is not written in your bones. It is negotiated, argued, torn up, and rewritten. Every law you follow is a compromise between what you want and what others demand. It is like signing a lease for a shared apartment. You agree to quiet hours, to cleaning the kitchen, to paying your share of the rent, not because you love rules, but because you want a place to live. If the landlord stops fixing the heat, if your roommate trashes the living room, the deal starts to crack. You start to wonder what you are really getting for what you give up. The tension never goes away. Every protest, every strike, every act of civil disobedience is a reminder that the contract is always up for renegotiation. The law is not a command from above. It is a conversation among equals, sometimes shouted, sometimes whispered, sometimes broken altogether. So the next time you see someone refuse to obey, or you feel the urge to step out of line, remember, the contract is not a given. It is a choice, renewed every day by every person who decides whether to go along or to resist. If the contract is broken, what do we owe each other? The prisoner's dilemma. Why cooperation fails. Two men sit in separate rooms, each staring at a blank wall. Each offered the same deal. If you betray your partner, you go free and he takes the fall. If you both betray, you both get punished. If you both stay silent, you both get off easy. But you cannot talk. You cannot trust. You can only guess what the other will do. This is the prisoner's dilemma. Born in 1950 at the Rand Corporation by Merrill Flood and Melvin Drescher. It is not just a puzzle. It is a trap built into the logic of self-interest. The rules are simple, but the outcome is a mess. If you act rationally, you betray. If your partner acts rationally, he betrays. You both end up worse off than if you had trusted each other. The math is clean. The feeling is not. Game theory calls this a dominant strategy. In plain language, it means the smart move is the one that makes everyone lose. You can see it in the arms race of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union both built mountains of nuclear weapons, each afraid to be the one who blinked first. Both sides would have been safer if they had stopped, but neither could risk being the only one to trust. You see it in climate change. Every country knows the planet is in danger. Every leader knows that cutting emissions would help. But if you cut and the others do not, you pay the price and they get the benefit. So everyone waits. Everyone loses. It is not just nations, it is your kitchen. Two roommates, both waiting for the other to do the dishes. Each thinks, why should I be the sucker? The sink fills up. The smell gets worse. Nobody wins, but nobody gives in. That is the frustration at the heart of the prisoner's dilemma. Good intentions are not enough. Rational self-interest, the thing we are told to trust, can make everyone worse off. You can want to cooperate. You can want to do the right thing. But if you cannot trust the other side, you are trapped. The punchline is not that people are bad. The punchline is that the system is broken. The logic of the game makes betrayal the smart move, even when it is the move that ruins everything. You are right to feel angry. You are right to feel stuck. If cooperation is so fragile, how does anything get done? The banality of evil ordinary people, unthinkable acts. You are sitting at a desk, shuffling papers, stamping forms, moving one file to the next. You do not feel like a villain. You do not feel like anything at all. In 1961, Adolf Eichmann sat in a glass booth in Jerusalem and insisted he was just following orders. He had organized the trains that carried millions to their deaths, but he told the court he never killed anyone. He was a bureaucrat, not a monster. Hannah Arendt watched the trial and saw something that terrified her. Eichmann was not a raving fanatic. He was not even especially hateful. He was ordinary. He spoke in cliches. He talked about duty, about doing his job, about obeying the law. When asked if he felt guilty, he said he felt more like a victim than a perpetrator. He had simply done what was expected of him. That should make you uneasy, because if evil looks like a monster, you know how to spot it. But if evil looks like a man in a suit, shuffling papers, doing what everyone else is doing, then where is the line? Arendt called it the banality of evil. The horror is not in the rage or the bloodlust. The horror is in the emptiness. The worst crimes in history were committed by people who thought they were just doing their jobs. Think about the last time you filled out a form without reading it. The last time you clicked accept without thinking. The last time you did what you were told because it was easier than asking why. That is the shape of the banality of evil. It is not a scream. It is a shrug. Eichmann's defense was that he was a cog in a machine. He said he had no choice. But every machine is made of choices. Every system is built from the small, silent decisions of people who do not want to make trouble. The paperwork that sent millions to their deaths was signed, stamped, and filed by people who went home at 5 and kissed their children goodnight. You are right to be disturbed by this, because it means that evil does not always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in the routines of ordinary life. Sometimes it is the absence of thought, the refusal to see, the comfort of not asking questions. The banality of evil is not about monsters. It is about people who forget to be human. If evil is ordinary, what protects us from it? The hedonic treadmill. Why happiness fades. You buy the thing, the phone, the car, the shoes. For a week, maybe a month, it is everything. You show it off. You check it twice before bed. Then, one morning, you wake up, and it is just your phone. Just your car. Just shoes. The thrill is gone, and you are back where you started, scanning for the next fix. In 1971, psychologists Philip Brickman and Donald Campbell gave this cycle a name: the hedonic treadmill. No matter how fast you run, you stay in the same place. You adapt to pleasure. You adapt to pain. The new becomes normal, and normal becomes invisible. It sounds like a trick of language, but it is a trick of the mind. In 1978, Brickman and his colleagues did something wild. They tracked down 22 lottery winners and 29 accident victims in the Midwest. Some had won more money than they could spend in a lifetime. Some had lost the use of their bodies in a moment. A year later, they asked them all the same question: how happy are you really? The answers should bother you. The lottery winners were not much happier than the control group. The accident victims were not much sadder. After the shock wore off, both groups drifted back to the same baseline, the same treadmill, no matter which way they ran. That makes no sense. You are right to be disturbed by it. If happiness can survive disaster and ignore fortune, what is the point of chasing it at all? Think of it like a treadmill that speeds up as you run. The faster you go, the faster it goes. You sweat, you strain, you push for the next milestone. But the scenery never changes. The moment you stop running, the belt keeps moving beneath your feet, and you are right back where you started. Or think of it like the first bite of cake at a birthday party. The first bite is perfect. The second is good. By the third, you are already thinking about something else. The pleasure fades, but the craving does not. The inversion is brutal. You do not get happier by getting what you want. You get used to what you have, and then you want something else. The mind is not built for satisfaction. It is built for adaptation. Brickman and Campbell called it hedonic adaptation. Psychologists Frederick and Lowenstein found it everywhere. People adapt to marriage, to promotions, to disability, to job loss. The emotional spikes flatten out. The baseline returns. The punchline is not that happiness is impossible. It is that happiness is a moving target. Lottery winners and paraplegics, after a year, are not so different. The world changes, but the mind resets. If happiness fades, can it be made to last? The paradox of choice. Too many options. You are standing in the supermarket, frozen. 50 kinds of jam stare back at you. Raspberry, wild raspberry, raspberry with seeds, raspberry without. Apricot, low sugar apricot, organic apricot. The longer you look, the less you know what you want. You came in for jam. Now you are not sure you even like jam. Barry Schwartz saw this happen everywhere. In 2004, he wrote The Paradox of Choice. He argued that more options do not always mean more freedom. Sometimes, they mean paralysis. You think you want more choices, but when you get them, you freeze. Or worse, you choose and then regret it. Sheena Iyengar and Mark Lepper ran the experiment. They set up a table in a grocery store. Sometimes they offered 6 jams to taste, sometimes 24. When there were 6, people tasted, picked, and bought. When there were 24, people tasted more, but almost no one bought anything. Too many options, and the mind stalls out. It is not just about jam. It is about genes, jobs, even love. The more options you have, the more you imagine the perfect one must be out there. You pick something, but you cannot stop thinking about the ones you left behind. Every choice is haunted by the ghost of the better choice you did not make. It is like standing in front of a menu you cannot read. The waiter hovers. You know you have to pick, but every dish you do not choose becomes a tiny loss. You clicked this video because some part of you knows. You don't want to wake up one day and realize you lived the wrong life. Because that's what happens. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Through every silent compromise, every lie you tell to fit in, every truth you ignore just to stay safe. Until one day, you open your eyes and you can't recognize the person staring back. not all at once, but piece by piece. Through every silent compromise, every lie you tell to fit in, every truth you ignore just to stay safe. Until one day, you open your eyes and you can't recognize the person staring back. The tragedy of the commons. When everyone loses, you walk out to the field and the grass is gone. The ground is bare, trampled, nothing left but mud and hoofprints. It was not a storm, it was not a fire. It was everyone doing what made sense for themselves, one cow at a time, until there was nothing left for anyone. Garrett Hardin named it in 1968. The tragedy of the commons. He was not talking about ancient history. He was talking about right now. Shared land, shared water, shared air. When a resource belongs to everyone, it is protected by no one. Each person thinks, if I do not take my share, someone else will. So you add one more cow, you take one more fish, you burn one more gallon of gas. You are not greedy, you are rational, and so is everyone else. The field collapses, the fish vanish, the air thickens. The loss is not dramatic, it is slow, invisible, and then, suddenly, final. In 1992, the cod fishery off Newfoundland shut down overnight. Centuries of abundance, gone. 40,000 people out of work. The ocean did not run out of fish. It ran out of enough fish to recover. The commons was not destroyed by villains. It was destroyed by neighbors, each acting with perfect logic. You want to blame someone, but there is no one to blame. The tragedy is that there is no villain. There is only the math of self-interest, multiplied by millions. Atmospheric carbon dioxide was 280 parts per million before the factories. Now it is over 420. No one set out to change the climate, but everyone, together, did. It is like a potluck where everyone brings nothing, hoping someone else will bring enough for all. You show up hungry, and the table is empty. You are not surprised, you are just disappointed. You know you would have done the same. The tragedy of the commons is not a story about evil. It is a story about how good intentions, multiplied by enough people, can erase the future. It is about how everyone acting rationally can destroy what everyone needs. If the commons can't be saved, what hope is there for the future? The Sorites paradox. When does a heap become a heap? You start with a single grain of sand. No one calls that a heap. Add another, still not a heap. Keep going. 10 grains, 100, 1,000. At what point does the pile become a heap? No one can say. That is the Sorites paradox, and it has been bothering people for over 2,000 years. Eubulides of Miletus, a Greek philosopher from the 4th century before the Common Era, was the first to put this in words. He asked, if you remove one grain at a time from a heap, when does it stop being a heap? Or, in reverse, when does a pile of sand cross the line from not a heap to heap? The problem is not the sand. The problem is the word. Heap is vague. So is bald, tall, rich, old. You can add or subtract tiny amounts, and the label never seems to change until suddenly it does. This is not just a trick of language, it is a trap for the mind. You see it every time someone tries to draw a line in the sand, literally or legally. In 1993, the United States Supreme Court had to decide if vague scientific standards could be used as legal thresholds. They said no. The law needs sharp edges, but the world is made of gradients. Think about a beard. 1 hair is not a beard. 2 is not a beard. But at some point, you look in the mirror and realize you have one. No one can tell you the exact moment it happened. It is like waking up and realizing you are old, or in love, or no longer a child. The change is real, but the boundary is invisible. This is why the Sorites paradox matters. It is not just about sand or beards. It is about every place where language meets reality and fails to draw a clean line. It is why legal battles rage over what counts as drunk driving or reasonable doubt. It is why identity can feel slippery, why you can wake up one day and not recognize the person you have become. No one can say exactly when a heap becomes a heap. If boundaries are blurry, what else is uncertain? The problem of induction. Can the sun rise tomorrow? You wake up before dawn and see the first hint of light. You expect the sun to rise. You have always expected it. Every morning of your life, the sun has come up. Every morning of your parents' lives, and their parents before them, the same. But David Hume, sitting in Edinburgh in 1748, looked at that certainty and called it a trick. Just because something has happened 1,000 times does not mean it will happen again. The universe does not owe you a sunrise. Hume's problem of induction is not a riddle. It is a crack in the foundation of how you know anything at all. He wrote, in an enquiry concerning human understanding, that our belief in the future is not built on logic. It is built on habit. You expect the sun to rise because it always has. You expect the floor to hold your weight because it always has. But there is no law of reason that says the next moment must follow the last. The world could change in the time it takes you to blink. This is not just a philosopher's game. Every science, every prediction, every plan you make for tomorrow is built on the same invisible leap. You see patterns, you trust them, and you bet your life on them. But Hume's challenge is simple and brutal. No amount of past evidence guarantees the future. The turkey in Bertrand Russell's story is fed every day, grows fat and content, and comes to expect food. Then Thanksgiving comes, and the pattern ends with a knife. The turkey's mistake is not stupidity. It is induction. You might feel a little dizzy. You should. Hume is not saying the sun will not rise. He is saying you cannot know for sure. The ground you stand on is not as solid as you thought. That makes no sense. And you are right to be disturbed by it. The world feels stable because your mind is built to expect stability. But the logic that underpins that feeling is missing. Think of it like your favorite shortcut on your phone. You tap the icon, and it always opens your messages. You trust it. But one day, after a software update, the icon does something else. The habit was never a guarantee. Or think of the moment you realize a friend you trusted has been lying. Every memory, every assumption, is suddenly up for grabs. The past was not a promise. Science, you might say, is different. Science is proof. But even science is built on induction. Isaac Newton's laws ruled for centuries, absolute and unbreakable, until Einstein and quantum mechanics showed the cracks. Karl Popper, a century after Hume, tried to answer the problem by saying science does not prove, it only survives. A theory is never certain, only not yet disproven. Every experiment is a bet that the future will look like the past. Sometimes it does not. Here is the inversion. The problem of induction is not just a problem for philosophers. It is the price of living in a world that changes. The more you know, the more you realize how much is built on trust, not certainty. The sun has always risen. The turkey has always been fed. But no law of nature, no logic, no science can promise you that tomorrow will look like today. You are not wrong to feel uneasy. The ground really does shift beneath your feet. The only question left is the one Hume never answered. If the future is uncertain, how do you live with risk? The butterfly effect. Small causes big effects. You are sitting in your kitchen, staring at a weather forecast. The app says clear skies, but you remember last week's storm that came out of nowhere. You think you know how the world works. You are wrong. In 1961, Edward Lorenz was running weather simulations at MIT. He was not trying to change the world. He was just in a hurry. He rounded a number in his calculations from 0.506127 to 0.506. The result? the simulated weather spun off into a completely different future. Not a little different. Unrecognizable. Lorenz stared at the printouts and realized he had stumbled into something no one had seen before. The tiniest change in the starting point could make the whole system explode into chaos. He called it the butterfly effect. In 1972, Lorenz gave a talk with a title that sounded like a joke. Does the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil set off a tornado in Texas? He was not joking. He meant it. In a world as tangled as ours, a butterfly's wing beat could, in theory, tip the balance and set off a chain of events that ends with a tornado on the other side of the planet. That should make you uneasy. Because if a butterfly can do it, so can you. So can anyone. The weather is not the only thing that works this way. The stock market, your friendships, the path of your life, all of them are complex systems, sensitive to the smallest nudge. A single word, a missed call, a forgotten appointment. Any of these could set off a chain reaction you will never see coming. Think of it like a domino chain, but not the kind you set up on your living room floor. Imagine a chain of dominoes that fills a stadium. You tap the first one, and somewhere in the upper deck, 1,000 feet away, the last domino falls. You cannot see the whole chain. You cannot predict which domino will tip which, but you know that your tiny action started something enormous. In 1987, James Gleick wrote about chaos theory and how it was reshaping science. Economists realized that a single rumor could crash a market. Biologists saw that a tiny mutation could change the fate of a species. The world is not a machine with predictable gears. It is a storm of possibilities, each one waiting for the smallest push. That makes no sense. You are right to be disturbed by it. We want the world to be fair, to be stable, to be understandable. But the truth is, the world is sensitive, wild, and deeply connected. You cannot know what your smallest action will do. You cannot know what you have already set in motion. Here is the inversion. Most people hear the butterfly effect and think it means you should be careful, that you should try to control every detail. But the real lesson is stranger. You cannot control it. You cannot predict it. The only thing you can do is act, knowing that your actions matter in ways you will never see. The universe is not built for certainty. It is built for surprise. If everything is connected, what responsibility do you have? The paradox of value. Water or diamonds? You are crawling through the desert. Your lips are cracked. Your tongue is thick. Ahead, you see a glass of water in one hand and a diamond in the other. You can only choose one. Adam Smith, writing in 1776, called this the paradox of value. Water is essential. You die without it. Diamonds are useless for survival. Yet in the market, diamonds are worth more than water. Why? Smith could not answer. He just pointed at the absurdity and left it hanging. It gets weirder. In 2007, a bottle of water sold for over $90 at a Sotheby's auction. In the California drought of 2015, some towns paid more per gallon for emergency water than for gasoline. The price of water can swing from almost nothing to more than gold, depending on where you are and how desperate you feel. The logic that finally cracked the paradox did not come from a philosopher, but from three economists in the 1870s, William Stanley Jevons, Carl Menger, and Leon Walras. They called it marginal utility. The value of something is not about how much you need it in general. It is about how much you need the next unit. If you are drowning in water, another glass is worthless. If you are dying of thirst, it is priceless. Think about your phone charger. At home, you would not trade it for a gold bar. On a desert island, the gold bar is a paperweight. The charger is useless. But if your phone is your only way to call for rescue, suddenly the charger is worth more than anything else you own. Value is not in the thing. It is in the moment, the need, the story you are living. Diamonds are worth more than water until you are dying of thirst. That is not a flaw in the system. That is the system. The market does not care about what is essential in the abstract. It cares about what is scarce, what is wanted, what is needed right now. You are right to feel that this is upside down. It is, but it is also the only logic that fits the world we actually live in. The price tag is not a measure of importance. It is a measure of context. If value is subjective, what else is negotiable? The problem of other minds. Are you alone? A child asks. How do you know anyone else is real? You pause, and for a second, the world tilts. You can see their face, hear their voice, but you cannot reach inside and feel what they feel. You never have. You never will. This is the problem of other minds. John Stuart Mill put it on paper in 1865. But you have felt it since you were old enough to wonder if your parents loved you the way you loved them. You can watch someone laugh. You can see them cry. But you are always on the outside. You can never open the door and step into their experience. You can only guess. Solipsism is the nightmare version. The idea that only your own mind is certain to exist. René Descartes circled it in 1641, doubting everything except his own thoughts. The rest of the world, your friends, your family, the stranger on the bus, could be shadows, puppets, or dreams. You cannot prove otherwise. No one can. Thomas Nagel sharpened the knife in 1974. He asked, "What is it like to be a bat? Not what a bat does or how it navigates, but what it feels like from the inside." The answer: you will never know. You can study sonar. You can map the bat's brain. But the experience itself is locked away. Consciousness is a private room with no windows. It gets worse. Even with the people you love most, you are separated by a wall. You can tap on it. You can shout through it. But you cannot pass through. Imagine two people in soundproof rooms tapping on the wall in Morse code. You can send messages. You can guess at the rhythm. But you will never hear the music playing in the other room. You can never be sure you are understood, or that you understand. That is the loneliness at the heart of being human. You are surrounded by minds, but you are always alone in yours. Empathy is the best tool you have, but it is a tool built on imagination and hope. You look for clues in words, in faces, in silences. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you miss by miles. And yet, you keep tapping. You keep trying, because every once in a while, the pattern on the wall matches the one in your chest, and you feel less alone. You cannot know what anyone else is experiencing, but you can reach for them anyway. If you can't know other minds, how do you connect? The paradox of hedonism. Chasing happiness makes you unhappy. You have seen this before. Someone chasing happiness like a dog chasing its own tail. They book the trip, buy the shoes, order the dessert, swipe for the next date. And every time the thrill is just out of reach. The more frantic the pursuit, the emptier it feels. It is not just them. It is you, too. In 1874, Henry Sidgwick sat down to write The Methods of Ethics and named the thing that had been haunting people for centuries: the paradox of hedonism. The more you aim directly at happiness, the less likely you are to catch it. It slips through your fingers the moment you grab for it. It is like trying to catch your own shadow on a sunny day. The harder you run, the further it dances away. You can see it, you can almost touch it, but the act of chasing is what keeps it out of reach. John Stuart Mill, who spent his life thinking about happiness, wrote that those who only aim at their own happiness are the least likely to achieve it. The ones who find happiness are the ones who forget about it and aim at something else. A cause, a person, a piece of music, a problem to solve. Happiness sneaks up on them while they are busy living. Modern psychology has tried to outsmart the paradox, but the data keeps coming back the same. In 2011, researchers found that people who made happiness their main goal actually reported lower well-being than those who focused on meaningful activities or relationships. The more you chase happiness, the further it runs. You can see it in the numbers. In 1978, psychologists Brickman Coates and Janoff Bullman interviewed lottery winners and accident victims. 1 year after their life-changing events, both groups reported similar levels of happiness. The thrill fades, the pain dulls, and people return to their baseline. Brickman and Campbell called it the hedonic treadmill. No matter how fast you run, you end up back where you started. That should bother you, because it means happiness is not a destination, it is a byproduct. It is what happens when you are not looking for it. So the next time you feel the urge to chase happiness, remember the shadow. The more you chase it, the further it runs. If happiness can't be chased, how is it found? The problem of free will. Are you really choosing? The judge looks down at the man in the dock. The prosecutor says he chose to pull the trigger. The defense says he never had a real choice at all. The jury sits in silence, waiting to decide if a human being can be responsible for something he might have been destined to do. This is the problem of free will. You feel it every time you make a decision, from what to eat for breakfast to whether to confess a secret. It feels like you are choosing. But what if every choice is just the end of a chain that started before you were born? For centuries, philosophers have fought over this. On one side, determinism. The idea that every event, every thought, every twitch of your finger is the inevitable result of what came before. The laws of physics, your DNA, the way your parents spoke to you when you were 5. If you rewound the universe and pressed play, you would do the same thing every time. On the other side, free will, the sense that you could have done otherwise, that you are the author of your actions, not just a character reading lines from a script you never saw. But here is where it gets weird. In 1980, Harry Frankfurt argued that free will is not about being uncaused. It is about acting according to your own desires and values. If you want the chocolate cake and you eat it, that is free will, even if your wanting was shaped by 1,000 things you never chose. This is compatibilism, the idea that free will and determinism can both be true, if you define freedom as acting from yourself, not from outside compulsion. But not everyone buys it. Incompatibilists say this is just a trick of language. If your desires are determined, then so are your actions. You are a puppet, convinced you are pulling your own strings. The feeling of freedom is just that, a feeling. And then the scientists show up. In 2003, Benjamin Libet put electrodes on people's heads and asked them to flex their wrists whenever they felt like it. The brain's readiness potential, the signal that a movement is coming, lit up hundreds of milliseconds before the person reported deciding to move. The decision was already in motion before the mind caught up. Are you the driver, or just the passenger who gets told where you are going? This is not just a puzzle for philosophers. The law is built on the idea that people are responsible for what they do. In the United States, in France, in India, the courtroom assumes you could have chosen differently. But as neuroscience and psychology dig deeper, the ground under that assumption starts to shake. If every action is determined by causes outside your control, what does it mean to blame, to punish, to forgive? Think about your own life. The last time you lost your temper, or made a promise, or broke one. Did you choose, or did the choice happen to you? It feels like freedom. But so does a dream, until you wake up. It is like standing in front of a mirror, raising your hand, and feeling sure you could have left it at your side. But the mirror only shows what is already done. You are right to feel uneasy. The weight of responsibility is real, but so is the uncertainty. You may feel free, even if every choice is determined. If free will is an illusion, what does that mean for justice? The paradox of inquiry. How do you search for the unknown? You are searching for your keys in the dark. You do not know exactly where they are, or even what they will sound like when your hand brushes them. But you know the shape of the search. You know the feeling of relief you are hoping for. That is the only reason you keep moving your hands across the table. Socrates asks this question in Athens, 24 centuries ago. In Plato's dialogue, Meno, he sits across from a young man and asks, "How can you search for something if you do not know what it is. If you know it, you do not need to search. If you do not know it, you would not recognize it, even if you found it. This is the paradox of inquiry. It is a trap that should not have an exit. The first time you hear it, it sounds like a trick, but the more you think about it, the more it starts to feel like a wall. How do you ever learn anything new? How do you discover a truth that is not already inside you? Socrates' answer is even stranger than the question. He says that learning is remembering, that the soul already knows everything, and what we call discovery is just the process of recollection. You are not finding something new. You are uncovering something you already partly knew. That makes no sense, and you are right to be disturbed by it, because if Socrates is wrong, then every act of learning is impossible. But if he is right, then every act of learning is a kind of remembering. Either way, the ground under your feet is not as solid as you thought. Think about the last time you learned something that changed you. Maybe it was a word in a language you did not speak, or the moment you realized someone you trusted had lied. The shock is not just in the new fact, it is in the way the new fact fits into a shape you already carried, like finding a missing puzzle piece in a box you did not know you owned. Or think about searching for your keys in the dark. You do not know exactly what you are looking for, but you know the feeling you are chasing. You know the sound your keys make, the weight in your hand, the relief when you find them. The search is not blind. It is guided by a kind of half-memory, a sense of what will feel right when you find it. Here is the inversion. The paradox of inquiry is not a dead end. It is a map of how discovery actually works. You can only find what you already partly know. Every question you ask is shaped by the outline of an answer you are already carrying. Every discovery is a recognition. The unknown is not a blank space. It is a shadow cast by the things you half remember. That is why the process of learning feels so strange. It is not just adding new facts. It is the shock of seeing something familiar in a place you did not expect. It is the moment you realize you have been searching for something all along, and only now can you name it. Heard in the right mood, this is not a limitation. It is a kind of hope. It means that the world is not closed to you. It means that every search, no matter how lost you feel, is guided by a thread you are already holding. If all knowledge is discovery, what are you missing right now? The paradox of fiction. Why do we cry at stories? You are sitting in a dark theater, tears running down your face. The credits roll. The lights come up. You know with absolute certainty that the person you are mourning never existed, and yet the grief is real. Your body does not care that Anna Karenina is ink on a page, or that Beth March is just a name in a book, or that Dobby the house elf was pixels and voice acting. You feel it anyway. This is the paradox of fiction. In 1975, Colin Radford and Michael Weston gave it a name. How can we feel genuine emotions for people and events we know are imaginary? You are not confused. You do not believe the story is real. But your heart pounds, your stomach drops, your eyes sting. The same brain regions light up as if you were watching a friend in trouble. The amygdala, the anterior cingulate cortex, your body's alarm bells, do not distinguish between fact and fiction. It makes no sense, and you are right to be unsettled by it. Why should a story about a woman in 19th century Russia, or a wizard in a castle, or a cartoon lion losing his father, leave you sobbing in your living room? Why should you feel more for a character in a novel than for a distant acquaintance in real life? People have reported crying harder for Anna Karenina than for their own relatives. That is not a failure of reason. That is how you are built. Think about the last time you lost yourself in a book. You know the feeling. You are curled up on the couch, the world around you fading. You turn the page, and suddenly you are not in your living room anymore. You are in the snow with Anna, or in the hospital with Beth, or at the train station with Dobby. The story is a trapdoor. You fall through it, and for a moment the pain is yours. It is like waking from a dream and feeling the echo of fear or joy, even though you know it was not real. Or like hearing a song that reminds you of someone you have never met. The emotion is real, even if the cause is not. Here is the twist. The paradox of fiction is not a bug. It is a feature. Stories are how you practice feeling. They are flight simulators for the heart. You rehearse grief, love, courage, and loss in the safety of imagination. You learn what it means to be human by pretending to be someone else. But that should make you pause. If you can feel real grief for imaginary people, what else can stories do to you? If fiction can move you, what is the power of stories? The paradox of analysis. Explaining the obvious. What is a bachelor? You think you know. You are sure you know. But try to explain it out loud, right now, to someone who has never heard the word. You might say, a bachelor is an unmarried man. That feels clean. But then you start to wonder, what about a widower? What about a monk? What about a man who has never been married but lives with a partner for 40 years? Suddenly, the word you have used your whole life is leaking at the edges. This is the paradox of analysis, and it drove G.E. Moore half mad in the early 20th century. Moore wanted philosophy to be precise, to take the words we use every day and pin them down with definitions so sharp you could not slip a hair between them. But every time he tried, the same thing happened. The more obvious the word, the more impossible it became to define without either saying something so trivial it was useless, or so complicated it was wrong. It is like explaining a joke. The moment you start, the magic is gone. You can break down every word, every pause, every raised eyebrow, but the thing you are trying to capture slips through your fingers. The joke is dead, and you are left with a corpse and a list of reasons why it was funny. C.H. Langford, writing in 1942, put it even more sharply. He said that if your analysis is correct, it tells you nothing new. If it tells you something new, it is not correct. Try to define bachelor again. You can say unmarried man, but then you have to explain what counts as unmarried, what counts as man, and before you know it, you are knee-deep in exceptions and counterexamples. The word that felt so obvious now feels like a trap. This is not just a game for philosophers. It is the reason legal documents run for pages, why computer programs crash over a missing comma, why you can argue with someone for hours and realize you are using the same word in two different ways. The more you try to nail down the meaning the meaning wriggles away. Think about the last time you tried to explain something simple to a child. Why is the sky blue? What is money? Why do we shake hands? The first answer is easy. The second is harder. By the third, you are questioning everything you thought you knew. The obvious becomes absurdly complex. Moore never solved the paradox. No one has. Every attempt to define the simplest things ends up making them more confusing. The words we use to build our world are made of quicksand, and yet we keep building. If the obvious is so hard to explain, what else are we missing? The paradox of tolerance. Frame break. You think you are open-minded. You are listening to a list about philosophy, after all. But let's not pretend. There is a line you will not cross. Maybe you do not know where it is yet. Maybe you have never been tested. But it is there, like a locked door in your own house. You walk past it every day, pretending it is just a wall. Karl Popper saw it in 1945, writing in the shadow of the Second World War. He warned that a society that tolerates everything, even the intolerant, will not survive. Unlimited tolerance leads to the end of tolerance. The moment you let the truly intolerant speak and act without resistance, you hand them the keys to the house. They do not want to live with you. They want to own the place, and they will burn it down if you let them. You might think, I would never let that happen. But the line is not always clear. In 2017, Charlottesville, Virginia, became a battlefield over this very question. A white nationalist rally, violence in the streets, a woman named Heather Heyer killed. Suddenly, everyone had to decide, what will I allow? What will I refuse? The debate was not about abstract principles. It was about bodies on the pavement and words that could kill. Maybe you believe in free speech, in hearing every side, but then you hear something that makes your skin crawl. A 2016 Pew survey found that 40% of millennials in the United States thought the government should be able to prevent people from making statements offensive to minorities. That is not a fringe. That is almost half a generation, drawing a line and saying, "No further, you have a line too." Maybe it is racism. Maybe it is violence. Maybe it is something quieter, like cruelty disguised as honesty. But it is there, and the moment you see it, you realize that open-mindedness is not a virtue without limits. It is a tool, and every tool can be misused. Think about your own house. You invite people in, you let them speak, argue, disagree. But if someone comes in swinging a hammer, threatening your family, you do not debate. You throw them out. The locked door is not a failure of hospitality. It is the condition for having a home at all. Here is the discomfort. Everyone has a line they will not cross. Even you. Especially you. The only question is whether you know where it is and what it says about you. If you have limits, what do they say about you? The paradox of self-reference. This statement is false. A sentence can break your brain. This statement is false. That is the liar paradox, and it has been haunting logic since Eubulides of Miletus first said it in ancient Greece. If the statement is true, then it is false. If it is false, then it is true. You can feel the floor drop out from under you. Self-reference is the trick. A sentence that points at itself, like a mirror reflecting another mirror, until you cannot tell what is real and what is just a reflection of a reflection. Most of the time, language works, but sometimes, when it loops back on itself, it short-circuits the whole system. This is not just a word game. The liar paradox is a crack in the foundation of logic. For centuries, philosophers tried to patch it. They said, maybe the sentence is meaningless, or maybe it is both true and false at once. But the paradox would not go away. It kept showing up, in new disguises, wherever people tried to build perfect systems. In 1931, Kurt Gödel took the idea of self-reference and used it to blow up mathematics. He wrote a statement, inside the language of arithmetic, that said, "This statement cannot be proved. If it could be proved, the system was inconsistent. If it could not, the system was incomplete. Either way, the dream of a flawless, airtight mathematics was dead." Gödel's incompleteness theorems are the liar paradox, weaponized. Alan Turing saw the same pattern in computers. He asked, "Can you write a program that decides whether any other program will ever stop running?" He proved you cannot. The proof is a trick of self-reference, a program that asks about itself, and the result is undecidable. Some questions have no answer, not because we are ignorant, but because the question itself is a logical trap. You might think this is just a problem for mathematicians, but self-reference is everywhere. It is the feeling you get when you try to define yourself and end up describing the act of describing. It is the moment you look in a mirror and see another mirror behind you and realize there is no end to the tunnel. Try this at home. Stand between two mirrors and look at your own reflection, reflected back and forth, smaller and smaller, until it disappears. That is what happens when language turns on itself. The system cannot decide what is real and what is just a copy. Some statements cannot be true or false. They are only paradoxical. If logic can break, what else is fragile? The paradox of value. Frame break. You have been listening for a long time. You have heard about brains in vats, trolleys on tracks, and philosophers who doubted their own hands. But let's drop the pretense for a second. I want you to imagine something real. You are thirsty. Not, I could use a drink thirsty. I mean the kind of thirst that makes your tongue stick to your teeth. The kind that makes you dizzy. The kind that makes you desperate. Now, I want you to look at this list of ideas. All the paradoxes, all the clever arguments, all the names and dates and stories. Imagine I put a glass of water in front of you, and I say, pick one idea from this video. Any one. Trade it to me, and you get the water. Which one do you give up? Or do you try to hold on to all of them and let the water sit there, sweating in the sun? Adam Smith called it the paradox of value. In 1776, he wrote that water is essential for life but costs almost nothing, while diamonds are useless but cost a fortune. Economists spent a century trying to explain why. In the end, it comes down to this. Value is not about what something is. It is about what you need right now. In 2004, a bottle of water sold for $60,000 at a charity auction in Los Angeles. The water was nothing special. The context was everything. In the California drought of 2015, some towns paid more per gallon for water than for gasoline. Scarcity turns the ordinary into the priceless. You think you know what you value, but you do not. Not until you are forced to choose. Andrew Hyde, in 2008, auctioned off everything he owned to fund a year of travel. He said the hardest thing to part with was a single book he had read as a child. But when it came down to it, hunger and the promise of something new outweighed nostalgia. You would do the same. You would trade your favorite book for a meal if you were hungry enough. Let's not pretend knowledge is immune. You have spent the last hour collecting ideas, stacking them up like rare coins. But if I locked you in a room with nothing but this list and a glass of water just out of reach, how long before you start bargaining? Take the ship of Theseus. Take the trolley problem. Just give me the water. Every idea in this video is priceless until you are dying of thirst. The endowment effect, Richard Thaler called it. You value what you already have more than what you do not. But that value is a trick of the mind. It vanishes the moment your needs change. The most profound idea in the world is worthless if it cannot keep you alive. So here is the real question. Not which idea is the most clever, or the most beautiful, or the most true. The question is, which one would you trade for a glass of water? And if you would trade any of them, what does that say about the value of knowledge itself? If knowledge has a price, what is it worth to you? The paradox of choice. Frame break. Pick your favorite. Go on. Out of all 50 ideas, which one would you keep? You have been listening for hours, letting each one twist your mind a little tighter. And now I am asking you to choose. Not to remember, not to admire, but to pick one. You probably felt a little jolt of resistance just now. That is not an accident. That is the paradox of choice, and you are living it in real time. The moment you try to choose, the pleasure of possibility collapses into the pain of decision. Every option you consider is another you must abandon. The list that felt like a feast now feels like a table you are being asked to clear. This is not a trick of philosophy. In 2000, Sheena Iyengar and Mark Lepper set up a table at a California grocery store. Sometimes they offered shoppers 6 kinds of jam, sometimes 24. More people stopped when there were more jams, but almost nobody bought any. When there were only 6, people actually made a choice. Too many options, and the mind freezes. You have felt this before. Standing in front of a dessert table at a wedding, 50 tiny cakes, each one perfect. You circle, you hesitate, you imagine the taste of each. The first bite is never as sweet as you hoped because you are already mourning the 49 you left behind. The more you imagine, the less you enjoy. Barry Schwartz wrote a whole book about this in 2004. He called it the paradox of choice. The more options you have, the less satisfied you feel. Even when you pick something good, you start to wonder if you could have done better. You replay the decision in your head. You blame yourself for not choosing perfectly, as if perfection was ever possible. And it gets worse. In 2011, researchers found that Israeli judges were more likely to grant parole at the start of the day or after a break. As the number of cases stacked up, their decisions got harsher. Too many choices, too much fatigue, and the mind defaults to no. The cost of choosing is not just regret. It is exhaustion. So here you are, at the end of the list, being asked to choose your favorite. Maybe you want to refuse. Maybe you want to keep them all. But the act of choosing is the point. It is the moment when possibility becomes reality, and reality is always a little disappointing. You are not wrong to feel this. The paradox is real. The more you care, the harder it gets. The more you imagine, the less you enjoy. Choosing your favorite can make you less happy with all of them. If every choice is a loss, what do you keep? The paradox of reflection. What will you do now? You are alone. Now, the list is over. The room is quiet, except for the sound of your own thoughts, still echoing with fragments of ideas. You have heard about ships rebuilt plank by plank, brains in vats, levers and trolleys, and the question of whether you would live your life again, unchanged. But the real question is not what you have heard. It is what you will do next. You are standing at a crossroads at dawn. The air is cold. The world is empty. There is no sign, no voice, no one to tell you which path to take. You have a map in your hand, but the lines are drawn in pencil, and the ink is already smudging. Every idea you have just heard is a direction, a possibility, a way of seeing, but none of them will walk for you. This is the part no one tells you about philosophy. The silence after the last word. The moment when the teacher leaves the room and you are left with the question, not the answer. Søren Kierkegaard wrote in 1843 that life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. That is not a comfort. It is a warning. You will not know what this meant until you have already chosen. In 1974, Robert Cialdini ran an experiment at Arizona State University. He found that people who paused to reflect on their values before making a decision were more likely to act in line with those values, not just to think differently, but to live differently. In 2008, a study at the University of Virginia found that 3 minutes of reflection on a single philosophical idea could change the way someone approached a habit they had struggled with for years. 3 minutes. That is less time than it takes to boil an egg. You are not the same person you were an hour ago. You have new questions now, and maybe a new discomfort. Maybe you are angry at an idea, or haunted by a paradox, or quietly thrilled by the possibility that you could be someone else tomorrow. That is the power of philosophy. Not to give you answers, but to make you see the world as a place where answers are possible. Think of it like standing in your kitchen at sunrise, holding a mug of coffee, staring out the window at a street that looks the same as it did yesterday. But you are not the same. You know something you did not know before. The street is unchanged, but you are not. The crossroads is not out there. It is in you. The most life-changing idea is not the one you remember. It is the one you act on. The one that makes you pause before you speak, or turn left instead of right, or call someone you have not spoken to in years. The one that lingers in the silence after the video ends. So, what will you do now?